Welcome to the People's Brief. I'm your girl, Anavani. Tonight, I am talking to three-time Emmy Award-winning journalist and former CNN host Don Lemon about life after mainstream media, the importance of building your own platform, and whether or not Americans are losing trust in the media, and how do we fix that? And later, I'm giving space to a group of men to have a hotly debated conversation that is always trending on social media, and that is Black masculinity. So let's get into it. So glad to have you, Don. How are you this morning?
Thank you, Lene. I'm doing very well, especially now that I'm here with you. You look gorgeous, by the way.
Thank you so much. You look amazing yourself. You were on CNN for 17 years.
Yeah.
And when you left, you went on to make your own media company, and now you have your own show, The Don Lemon Show. So can you talk to us about what that experience was like transitioning?
To be honest with you, if it wasn't for the election in 2024, I'm not sure that I would have done this. I wanted to have,
Really?
yeah, I said I wanted to have a voice for the election because I thought this was the 2024 election was one of the most important and most consequential in modern American history. And lo and behold,
Yeah.
I was right. It did not turn out the way that many of us hoped or that I hoped. And it was the first time that I ever really got politically involved in anything, but at least stating the person that I was going to vote for, which was Kamala Harris, because not because she's a Democrat, not because she's a woman. All those things are important and I respect, but because I believe in democracy and so does she.
Yeah. How does it feel?
Feels really, really, really good. I'm so glad that I did it, and I'm so happy to be free
Yeah.
and to be emancipated from corporate media.
And so how did you detach yourself from the machine?
Well, I mean, look, they forced me out, so I had to detach. It was like, boom. But also, I think because of the restraints of my contract, because of the non-compete, there are certain things that I couldn't do. It turned out to be the right place. So I say things can be a blessing in disguise. And
Yeah.
because had I been able to get a job in old school traditional television, I would have gone to that instead of going to this digital space where the world is right now. This is not only the present, it's the future.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to ask you what made you make the decision to get from behind the desk and sort of be on the streets, but it seems like you were kind of working around and doing what you could. And I feel like, as you said, that is 100% a blessing in disguise because you get to connect with a different base in a different way. And it just even sounds like you feel more grounded with community. And I'm really excited to just hear how people are sort of handling what they feel like their responsibility is and the sort of benefits, the immediate kind of return on investment.
I was doing a sort of traditional show where I was, just sort of sitting there and doing guests, which is totally fine. But to me, because I had been doing it for so long, I said, I need to create a community. And, this is different than CNN. I said, I need to create a community. And I said, you know what, I'm going to sit here in my living room and I'm just going to do a live at 5 and I'm going to create a community. The moment that I let people into my life, that I became my authentic self, that I was like, oh, there's a mess back there on the desk, or my TV isn't working right, or the fireplace isn't whatever. And that's what people connected to, and that's when it started going like that. So just lean into who you are is that's my advice. It worked for me. That's what worked for me.
People have had a lot to say about you and your career and whether you may or may not have been polarizing.
Am I polarizing? Yeah, I guess so. But I also think that people aren't used to someone like me spitting facts and telling them the truth, especially not on a platform that was in mainstream media. And even here, in digital media, like people criticize me for saying things that they say, but they just get away with it because they're white.
It feels like the sort of sensitivity around hotbed topics that are warranted from marginalized groups is being co-opted and sort of thrust in the opposite direction. And so now you have people like yourself. You have Joy-Ann Reid was taken off earlier. People just kind of being removed from their spaces to say what they want to say under the protections of free speech, more often than not, from a place of fact. From a place of truth, from a place of historical receipts and patterns within this country. Are you concerned that that sort of influence can trickle down into what you're doing?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Especially as my platform and my voice grows, And if it continues on this trajectory, I fully expect them to try to, censor me or suppress me or even try to get rid of me because they don't want voices of resistance and voices of truth out there. This time that we're in right now is not about the truth. So if you're telling the truth and people think that, oh my gosh, you're anti-Trump, you have Trump derangement syndrome, or you're anti-Republican or whatever, I'm anti-lies. I'm anti, trying to tell black people what to do, trying to tell immigrants what to do, and how to be and how to assimilate, telling women what they could do with their bodies. I'm anti that. And so, and does that make me a Democrat? I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent. Does that make me liberal? It makes me liberal on certain things. Does that make me conservative? It makes me conservative on certain things, but I'm an individual.
Yeah, we had Roy Wood Jr. on the show, and he talked about censorship. He was great. And he's a comedian, and so he definitely has different outlets, but I do wonder, given that people like you and I face that sort of pressure, what are your thoughts about the doing it anyway? Like, I hear you 100%. I'm also a person who's always going to speak the truth no matter what, but I just kind of am doing it blindly, regardless of what the consequences might be down the road, because I feel like I can't think about those consequences because what matters is the right now. But I'm just wondering how you might be juggling that or contemplating that.
I have a very similar philosophy as you, Lene, is that I'm just doing now. And I figure if the person who is the leader of the free world can say whatever he wants with impunity, I certainly can state my opinion as an American citizen who has a First Amendment right. And so I like to live in the moment. I don't like to fear the future. I just did a panel and interviewed the head of the NAACP, Derek Johnson, and he said in his message, the message that I took away from him and that he talked about a lot was operating from a place of surplus instead of a place of deficit. But I think our influence now in the culture is more prominent and bigger than it has been even in the past, which is, but we don't realize it. In this influencer culture, the world is yours. You can do and create whatever platform that you want without corporate media influence. The problem is that is getting people, is to not be in a silo.
Yeah.
And I think that part we must figure that part out. But I think this is a very exciting time, especially for people of color in this. We have to look at it as an opportunity and not as something like we're, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I've been forced into this. It's an opportunity that was created just for us.
You've told so many stories, you've interviewed so many people. I do wonder, given this climate that we're talking about, which stories do you think are the most important to tell now?
I think the most important story to talk about now is one of civil liberties, First Amendment rights, the Constitution. Those are really important because right now people's rights are being taken away. I've been saying that people need to get out and do something. I'm surprised that considering the images that are coming across my algorithm, right, my feed, seeing all of these people who are being brutalized and rounded up with no due process. I'm surprised that people aren't in the streets en masse protesting. But there's another side to that, and that is that this administration looks like they want martial law so that they can, we can not have an election in 2026 because they don't think that they can win. I grew up in the Deep South in Louisiana, and I've seen the racism there, and I remember the stories from my grandparents. As a matter of fact, I remember my grandmother sitting around talking about how she had to, the jelly beans in the jar and all that stuff when she went to vote, the poll tax, going to vote. And then my grandmother was only able to get a 5th grade education. And so I would teach her to read when I was in elementary school. And so I come from that sort of lineage, and so I'm a fighter. I'm a pugilist. And I think that's the big story. Where are we? Where's our courage? What are we going to do? And how do we gather and find our center to be able to fight against this?
And you said such an important word. I think gathering is going to be so necessary. We were talking in the last segment about how do we ensure safe spaces. It feels like we're about to, just for lack of having any other options, are about to get back to a place where we do have to gather, and we do have to figure out how to do that.
Be in community.
Meet people where they are. Yeah, exactly. Be in community, and also protect one another as we gather and figure out how to organize that way. We're losing a lot of options that are convenient, and I do think this moment is going to push us to a point where we have to explore what exists outside of our convenience to preserve our democracy, our civil liberties, and all these things. Do you have somebody that you really want to talk to right now?
Look, if I could get an interview with Trump, I would do it.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't think anyone like holds him to his, but like when he starts lying in an interview, everyone just lets him go on, and that is not me.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I would like to talk to Gavin Newsom. I've been trying to get Gavin, and not to do a fluffy interview, just to do a real meaty interview. Look, I would even want to talk to Netanyahu.
Really?
Yes, because I would want to know,
Wow.
how do you feel now after all of those people died? Do you feel like you still have the moral high ground? This is over religion, and religion doesn't, as far as I know, for me, my religion, they don't teach me to kill people en masse. And so I would want to talk to him about that.
Well, you wrote a book, sort of discussing, I guess, your relationship with your Savior. And it's called I Once Was Lost, My Search for God in America. First, tell people where they can find it, but also tell us what led you to write that book.
You can get it anywhere. You can go on Amazon, anywhere you get your books. If it's not in your bookstore, tell them to order it and get it for you. Try that local bookstore first if you can do it. Yeah, so I started writing this book actually before I left CNN. And most people
Okay.
did not know that I have such a strong faith. They're like, I didn't know. I'm like, yeah, because I don't wear it on my sleeve. And covering the news and politics, I realized that people were not only trying to blur the line between church and state, they were trying to erase it.
Yeah.
And I had to point out the hypocrisy of people who, called themselves of so-called evangelical Christians. And that was really the impetus behind the book.
Yeah, we had a conversation with Dr. Jamal Bryant not too long ago talking about the separating Christianity from conservatism and also Christian nationalism. And you
Religious
kind of
nationalism, white nationalism,
Yeah.
it's all tied in together.
all of the things, and you kind of stuck me with your commentary right before we started talking about the book, because you said that your faith does not teach you to kill people en masse, and to some people you might be the only one. Like just the way the religion has been used throughout history to perpetuate violence. I think we're in an age where a lot of people's beliefs that certain things are even like something. I believe the concept of manifest destiny to be violent. So whether it's the displacement or pushing out of people, or just the murder of Native Americans, the extermination of Native Americans, or just different sort of wars that have happened throughout history, we're coming to a place where people are observing religion for themselves and taking the middleman out of it. And I do believe that structure is losing power. So very grateful for your work. Please make sure you check your local bookstores for I Once Was Lost, My Search for God in America. You also look amazing on the front cover of this book.
And that is that was a year and a half ago I did that. That was the unretouched one. They sent me one and I was like, my God, I look like I'm 17 years old. Take all of that photoshopping off of it. But can I just say something that when you said I may be the only one, I think that I understand what you're saying and I agree with you, like, because I write about it in the book, how, bloodlust and sacrifices, that's all Christians, right? But what I understand that most people don't, and what I was trying to do is sort of make people literate about the Bible. It's mythology. A lot of it's mythology and it's allegory and it's lessons. It's not, you don't necessarily take it and say, well, now I'm supposed to kill someone. And I think that's what's happening around the world. People are taking it as if it is fact.
It's simply, just the weaponization of scripture to reach certain aims and saying God told you to do it. That's it in a nutshell. And a lot of people just don't understand how to separate that. Someone asked me recently, I made a video about my faith and things that I see changing in it in the landscape in Black churches in the South. And they said, well, how do you reconcile believing in this, knowing that your people may have never been introduced to it, not knowing that Christianity was introduced to Ethiopia before white people got there? Or how do you reconcile knowing that this has been used to oppress people? And I said, well, that's precisely it. It's been used to do that. That doesn't mean that it was its purpose.
Right.
So I'm really excited about the amount of people challenging these narratives that have dominated our country's lore. And I say lore specifically because it's folk tales designed to sort of paint this picture of America that does not exist. I'm excited to see it being dismantled and crumbling right before our eyes. And, you know, with everything that's going on, it is daunting to see the news every day, but everything does get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
And I am waiting on the better.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
can that better hurry up and get here, though?
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? It's really rough. I can't say I'm optimistic, but I'm faithful. So I'm trying my best, and I feel like everybody is. Thank you for trying your best. Thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for the evolution of yourself. I think that is an amazing thing for people to see. Someone who has been in the zeitgeist in the media for the better part of 2 decades and making the most out of what you have and still making an indelible impact in the movement. We just need that. It's so encouraging.
Oh,
so thank you.
Thank you, and you keep doing the work, too.
Well, please tell everybody where they can find your content.
Look, I'm telling everybody, I'm asking everybody to like and subscribe to The Don Lemon Show on YouTube. The Don Lemon Show on YouTube. You can find me anywhere on social, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Blue Sky, Fanbase, which is Black-owned. Make sure you check me out on Fanbase as well. So any Threads, I'm all over. But I go live every day, every weekday, 10 a.m. I have a live feed for about an hour, and then a live show. And then at 5 p.m. Eastern time, I have a live show as well. And I'm keeping you informed. I'm everywhere. I'm out on the streets. As soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to go do man on the street interviews.
Well, it seems that people can find you in a plethora of places to engage with your content. But thanks again so much for talking to us today. We'll be right back with more of the People's Brief coming up next.
So, fellas.
Yeah.
How do you define masculinity, and does that change as you get older?
Things that our society introduces to us that are typically associated with manhood, you know what I'm saying? I think that's kind of the canvas we all start with when we start defining Black masculinity. And the definition absolutely evolves, right? We all wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't a spectrum or a wide-ranging, you know, array of options of ways that we can be masculine as Black men. But I think it starts with just the typical behaviors, real general, broad stroke definition, you know what I'm saying? Typical behaviors associated with men and boys.
I think gendering it is kind of harmful, you know, just because I feel like any gender can be masculine.
I do too.
And so I think that, like, for me, it's more about like taking ownership, right? I think like masculinity centers around the idea of taking responsibility, owning your vulnerability, and I think providing care. Right? I think of masculinity, I think about somebody who is really confident in providing care to others, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I think anybody can operate in their masculine just like anyone can operate in their feminine.
Yeah, I think the way it's so to you as a child is very like macho, and it's a man thing.
Yeah.
I think as I've gotten older, you just kind of recognize it as more of an energy than anything else, especially in spaces of like just being provisionary and protective and stuff like that. Because you notice people in any given situation, if they got to turn that on, they turn it on no matter what gender, you know, age or whatever the case may be. I feel like it, like akin to what you're saying, like it's more of a spectrum of things too. I don't think there's like really any one way to define it, because I think it's very rigid when we start talking about like masculinity is hard and femininity is soft, when there's so much underneath that spectrum that goes along with it. So.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, where you create your own definition of what masculinity is for you. For me as a kid, I was taught, you know, it's based upon how much money you make or your financial stability, how athletic you are, you know, how many girls you can get, you know, all of those different cliches that you learn. And it's also culture-based too as well. You learn different things about masculinity in different cultures, depending on what culture you grew up in. But what I've come to define masculinity as is responsibility. And when we understand that that it is responsibility that comes with that masculine energy, then that's where you start to really evolve and shape the definition for yourself. Not based upon what society says, not based upon what other people's opinions are. It's based upon how you define it and then how you live it out.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, especially before I had kids, when I had this idea of like growing up, it was like, I'm gonna get a woman, I'm gonna have a child, we're gonna move out, we're gonna get out, like just adult but like being the one to take care of everything.
Yeah.
Because that's what I saw in my family. Like my dad, he not a super duper emotional person. If you talk to him about emotions, it'll get shut down. But like his work ethic is insane. And it's like if I have any questions about just being responsible and handling your business, I know I can go to him. Same thing with my granddad. My granddad, he like a typical Southern granddad, like the stereotype, like 2 families in the same city, 13 kids, but he taking care of everybody. I think once I come over the hurdle of like figuring out the responsible aspect of it, then it's about being responsible with your feelings too.
I think for too long we kind of framed masculinity as if, as men, we couldn't offer concession to anything. We couldn't be agreeable. We had to be stoic and hard and tough and completely emotionally unaware. And it's refreshing to see that through conversations like this and many others, you know, people are encouraging men to be in touch with their emotions. That's a huge, huge tool that we could use. I'm fortunate, man. My parents have been married for 54 years. And although, like you, my dad is not the most emotional person, my older brother always was cool and always was emotionally in tune too.
That emotional intelligence part is really important. I'm glad you brought it up because we teach our boys, and we were taught, most of us likely, you don't show weakness, right?
Yeah.
Weakness is something that you never show as a young man. And when you do show that, then now you put yourself in a vulnerable state. And vulnerability is something that we also don't want to show. So now what it does is it snowballs as we get older, and then now you're in a situation where you have a family, you have someone you love, they're asking you to change and to adapt and to grow, and you can't do it because you've never done it before.
Yeah.
And that becomes the problem, is that we live with these definitions that we don't know how to adapt from. So sometimes we just gotta call an audible and say, you know what, this is not working for me. And that's where the emotional intelligence comes in, is because then you start to understand and learn that I can change, I can show a little bit of vulnerability, I can show some level of weakness without being weak. You can do all those things and still be a masculine man. Mm-hmm.
And I think when we start to see a lot of abuse, it's because the only outlet that is respected amongst men is anger, right? Like, even when it comes to terms of disrespect, if I feel like you disrespected me with my words, then now I gotta take it up and either cut you deeper or get physical with you.
Yep.
Whereas and I've had to do this in repairing or just continuing relationships with some of my friends, like, bro, that shit you said last night hurt my feelings, bro.
Yeah.
And it's like, it don't even feel good to say that, but it's honest. And the way that people receive that, it'll change the way you deal with others, because oftentimes when I've been putting myself in a position to be vulnerable with other men, they reciprocate that vulnerability. And I think we all just kind of need a pass to do it with one another. Like, I think it's a perpetual cycle of us holding back because we feel like everybody else holding back too. And I think as we move forward, and especially as you get older, and then when you add kids into it, or just like your relationships with your friends or partners evolve, you're gonna need a space where like you can really be honest about how you feel about things, because of the repression. It's like you're gonna crack one day, and that anger is acceptable amongst us, but it ain't acceptable in the eyes of the law. It ain't acceptable in maintaining a fruitful relationship with anybody. Like, you put your hands on me, that's pretty much the end of that. You know what I'm saying? So I think I want to ask you, Dustin and Obio, a question about how masculinity is perceived in the LGBTQ community. Do you think the definition changes?
Ultimately, authenticity is what we appreciate most when it comes to presentation, right? And so as you mature and spend time seeing the world and meeting different people, you realize that all those games, that hyper masculine trope is just that. It's a trope, you know what I'm saying? And so it is something that's relevant when it comes to kind of the social engagement within our community. You, Gary, what you think?
Hey, yo, cool out. No, I think men in general are obsessed with power. You know what I mean? And I don't think that it takes a break when you are queer. And I think a lot of what happens in our community is this obsession with maintaining your power. And how do I be gay, which is essentially like a giving up of power. How do I maintain some of that? So then you get down with like height, masculinity, prowess, strength, and all those things get to qualify you, and so it becomes hierarchical. I'm gay, but I'm big. I'm gay, but I can fight. I'm gay, but I maintain my masculinity in a way that's proximate to straightness. And I think for our community specifically, it becomes a really tough game of like not mimicking straightness or even like existing under this patriarchy that we still exist under, but it's a catch-22 because a lot of times people act like our manhood is called into question because of our sexuality. But in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the social community, if I'm walking down the street, you're not thinking queer guy, you're thinking he's a man. If I put my hands on a woman, if I don't have any money, all those things will apply to me. And so I think within our community, the rat race that we're on now is to understand that we get the luxury to not view any emotion as weak. I often tell my children that anger is the laziest emotion. What do you feel? Like, you're not really mad, you're hurt, you're embarrassed, but like, tell me what you actually feel. Anger is lazy. And I think with our community, we have a little bit of room to be more interactive in our experience and more free in our flow, but I think we still exist under the patriarchy.
What do you think about masculinity and the black masculinity and mental health?
Well, first of all, they're directly related, right? You are almost in a prison, a mental prison, feeling like you can't be expressive, you can't hurt, you can't tell nobody you down, you know what I'm saying? You always have to be in fight or flight mode and choose to fight. That's a lot, you know what I mean? It's mentally oppressive, so there's definitely a correlation there. And it's something that we have to work hard on even now. You know, I'm evolved. Okay, I'm evolved. And I still am hard as hell on myself when it comes to tough it out, Dustin, or figure it out. You don't have time to wallow in it. You know what I'm saying? Figure it out. I'm very hard on myself, and for a long time I was proud of that. In my mind, I thought that it was like a strength or an expression of that, but it's actually the opposite.
I think therapy isn't a luxury. I think it's a necessity.
That part.
You know, because I think like the intersectionality of being black and all the other things that come along with being black, right, is a very interesting conundrum of an experience through this world. And I think doing that within your own understanding of self is gonna be very difficult. Reality is we don't have the tools. It just is what it is. Like, let it go, it's fine. Like, you're not wrong for not having access to what you need to regulate your emotions, to understand yourself, to breathe through it, to pause before, like, you know, whatever that looks like for you. And I think with men, I think a lot of our language keeps us stagnant. Because I think we think about like, embrace weakness. It's not weakness though. Like, being softer is not inherently weak, right? And I think a lot of us are like, I think if we change the narrative around what it means to be in your fullness, I think we'll see our mentals take a shift. And I also would like to see a shift in intimacy. A lot of men don't have a lot of men friends that they feel super safe with up in the morning, running to tell their deepest, darkest truths or their best thing to celebrate about. And I think if we open up the floodgates a little bit larger and we stop sexualizing everything and stop making everything a battle of who's the hardest. Because even me, like, I'm queer, but I probably like, you know what I'm saying? You can ask, you know what I'm saying? I used to get down, you know what I'm saying? It never didn't get down, right? But like, and it had nothing to do with sexuality, but like, you might not want it with me. And it's like, and I feel like to this point, that made me more masculine. It was about me like, I'm gay, but
I beat your ass.
no, for real.
It's
not that. It's just not that. It's
I've
never
been
been
telling
that.
my homeboys, like,
I'm still working on me. I told you. You know what I'm saying?
There's so many unspoken traumas in the black community. And, you know, we don't talk about them enough. And you know why? Because we don't trust the medical field. We've had so many bad experiences with the medical field, and you know, it's time for us to start to overcome that. It's time for us to get therapy. It's time for us to seek help and learn and understand that now more than ever, there are black professionals who look like us that are there to help us in different spaces, whether that be in the mental health space or physical health, whatever it is. So when we address those traumas and get the support that we need, then we start to see our eyes open up. Then we start to see ourselves grow and evolve into different levels. My daughter taught me the most important thing about mental health for me, because I was able to love in a totally different way than I had experienced before. And now she's so emotional, she's so affectionate every day. She wants to lay with daddy, she wants to hug on me. And I'm not necessarily used to that, but it just opened up my eyes to, you know, understand that, wow, like, I can be different. I can be vulnerable in this way.
Correct. Yeah. At 35, bro, I have started therapy.
Wow, let's give it up, man.
Shout out. Yeah. And the first session was awkward as hell because I'm like, am I talking too much?
Telling my business.
You know, you all in my you know what I'm saying? But after like 15, 20 minutes, you get real comfortable. I'm looking forward to like, I'll be looking forward to our sessions now because it's like, it's a thing that I can go freely and express through talk, you know what I mean?
Let it out.
Yeah, and I think a big part of our mental health and our sexual health as well is the fact that like there's a lot of sexual abuse that goes untalked about. This is
For
something
sure.
that I've discussed at a few times on my podcast, and through that vulnerability of just being able to be honest about it, it's freeing to other people too, because they feel a safe space to discuss these things that they may have had hidden away, and
Take away some of the shame attached
take the shame away. Especially with the platform I got, it's important to me to be vulnerable in that space and not feel weakness, but feel empowered. You know what I mean? I think oftentimes we don't want to talk about situations where we feel taken advantage of, even as a youth. Whether that even in business, we're taught to be shrewd businessmen and have this killer instinct when it comes to the point where it's oftentimes we're not even doing good business with each other because we have this fear that we're gonna get over on each other. So I think as we grow and as we evolve, our masculinity is gonna be called into question in all of the aspects, and it's up to us to define what that looks like. And from the mental health aspect, it's gonna have a lot to do with us being honest about those traumas and those things we experience, and even down to you scraping your knee. What is that scrape your knee moment for every black boy?
Right.
People say they want black men to be more expressive and emotional, and then when black men are expressive and emotional, then they're ridiculed and called sassy. But as far as the name calling and things like that, it's just I try my best to embrace my children with the way I wanted to be embraced, right? I think oftentimes when we grow up in homes without fathers, then we also have to deal with this whole thing of I had to be the mama and the daddy type shit. So then we have those relationships we have with our women and our mothers specifically get affected about how they start defining masculinity for us. I think there were some aspects that happened when my parents split, where my mom was overcompensating about what position she should take as raising me, because it's at some point she felt like she couldn't control me no more. So then it's what do? Do you get rid of them? Are you gonna see an uptick of violence? And I think a lot of times it's when you're trying to control men, a lot of times we're taught to control men through violence. And if you can't control them through violence, then you just get rid of them completely. Discard them, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think media has warped our perception of both genders. I think, and it's harmful on both sides, black women included, right? I think what I'm hearing a lot of black women talk about lately is that they're sick of dealing with men. They want to experience men, right? And I think they've had to deal with men for so long, whether it's through abuse, through less than experiences, through them, having to be forcibly docile. I think women are just sick of that. And I think it has resulted in this cycle of even women trying to placate men to get around men, if that makes any sense, right? And then it works to nobody's favor. So now we're having this whole rat race of who can be the worst of men the best. And I think having to figure out what it looks like for everyone to be themselves and to be valued for it. Again, not putting a weakness on femininity. I know a lot of straight men who are feminine and operate in it often and are not gay or not queer, but just operate in their femininity. A lot of women who are more masculine and are not hell bent on trying to be this soft little lamb, but are also very well within their womanhood. And even when it gets to the trans women conversation around what that means to honor their experience, and
for sure.
They're not being a nuisance or a poser to womanhood either, right? So I think again it's about allowing all of us to have our own experience in this world.
But what we do need to understand is right now more than ever, our black communities need to be coming together. We ain't got time to be talking about us against them or men against women and black. No, right now we got to unite, and we got to be able to come together, because it's been strategically put in place for us to be pulled apart. We have to understand that there's a certain level of fear for us to come together. Why? Because we're powerful together. We're more powerful together. We're more powerful together. So if we learn how to come together and stop finding ways to be different, finding ways to pull us apart, we're unstoppable. And that's what we need to be focused on.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about, especially when it comes to politics and activism, coalition. And oftentimes we talk about coalition with other communities, but I think we need to create a coalition within ourselves that involves a diversity of thought and a diversity of expression. A lot of times when we start talking about the black community, it's, but it got to be on my terms.
Right.
It's black, but you got to show up as this. You got to show up as that. I think A big part of it is undoing homophobia and transphobia. A big part of it is undoing misogyny.
Yes.
I think those things create some splits that are some fractures that's really hard to repair.
Sure.
Especially if you have hard stances on things like that, then there really can't be like any inclusivity. And it's just like, this is where you get into like red pill. I think if we're gonna be together, we gotta be together for real in a real way.
We do.
And be accepting. Let's do it, bro.
I ain't doing that. That's feminine. And we'll get together.
Man, we was on board, bro. You know what I'm saying? We was bridging the gap right there.
Oh man.
We still got work to do, man.
We do, man.
I want to thank Don Lemon for joining me. I will get him in the studio next time, I promise. I also want to thank my other guests, Dustin Ross, Deontay Kyle, Obio Jones, and Steve Sanders for doing all the heavy lifting for the conversation on Black masculinity. And now, it's time for my final thoughts with a segment we call The Debrief. You know, I really think today's entire episode was about evolution. Because it's really getting hard for us to have conversations, whether it be about the state of the world and mainstream media or the state of our community and just vulnerable conversations from people we might not want to hear from. These conversations can be polarizing. And the voices that we've traditionally listened to can also be polarizing and make things uncomfortable for us to digest. But everybody that I've had on this show today has saw a need, met it, and risen to the occasion. I think it's so important for us to continue to talk to one another about what we can do now, but also be healing community as we go along, because we're not going to be able to do any of this without one another and without the ability to truly listen to one another. And I know it's hard because we always think we're always right and our own experience tend to cloud our judgment or our ability to receive things, but we're in the business of having healthier conversations these days. I had a conversation backstage with the guys, and they've never met before today. Most of them have never met before today, but they want to do this monthly. So I think this sort of thing, whether you're watching it on your YouTube screen, whether you're watching it on TV, whether there's a podcast host that you like and enjoy, encourage these healthy conversations to keep happening, because it's going to be so much better for us in the long run. And we're going to continue to do our part in that fight as well. So never miss a beat on the People's Brief. I'll be back next week with more time.